Hey TSG, this is Ben. Today we're going to be talking about the Fehler, um, which is essentially, we're going to define up front as a failed cut or failed attack that allows you to quickly roll off into a second attack. So this is a combo attack. You're creating an attack which they will parry, allowing you to create an opening and move into that opening with your second attack. So we are going to think of this as something that we do against somebody who is passively defending. So not somebody who is looking to like a parry riposte where they might defend and immediately attack. Also not against somebody who is trying to single time defend and create a threat at the same time, but somebody who is defend, passively defending or pushing or cutting against the sword in a way that gives you an opening to work with. So our goal with this is to create an initial attack. That initial attack will fail, so it's not going to complete all the way through. You're going to move off that into another. This is often mistranslated, well, it's often translated as a feint, and I think that's okay to a certain degree, but I think there's a lot of different ways to feint. So I think it's better to think of this as a failed cut, as a failing cut, one where that first cut isn't completed all the way through. So let's start. We're going to jump in with the Danzig version of this, or the Rome version, sorry, of this, and then our next video we'll talk about the Lev version that you see. I think both of these illustrate the same concept. It's really just a matter of the sequence that you used in order to practice that concept. So the Rome version talks about cutting, starting with your left foot forward and cutting with what they call a free cut. And I'm cutting basically, which is a Zwerchhau that is not going to complete. So we can argue for days what a free cut is. For me, it is where my hands are cutting freely from my feet. So I'm not worried about the stabilization. I'm not worried about trying to anchor my feet to or chain my feet to my hands in any kind of way. They're completely unchained and separate. That's how I look at it and define it. And so one way you can do this is with just a simple step forward with your left foot. So if I'm already in my position and I'm going to take my left foot forward and cut a Zwerch, which is going to feel weird. So step, Zwerch with it. So enough to create a threat after that first, on that initial approach. You don't have to. Now, I think if you're really unchaining the hands and the feet, it doesn't really matter whether you are what your feet are doing. So if your right foot's forward and you want to do it, it tells you to do the left foot forward, right? So if we're sticking to the text, that's what we're doing. But if you're really thinking about moving these two pieces, the upper body from the lower body, differently, then it doesn't really matter. You might be moving around, kind of, and then whatever foot happens to be forward doesn't matter. You're going to launch from that. I think the follow-up works better with the left foot already forward, so I think that's probably why we train it that way, or why it's described that way. Think conceptually, outside of the example you see in the text, conceptually, if you take that and extrapolate it to a larger concept, I think you can apply that concept in a lot of different ways that you don't see in the text. So we're starting with the text version. Left foot's forward. I'm launching that bear-like cut off my shoulder at them to try to get a response. Now the way I'm doing this is not a real Zwerch, not a full Zwerch. What I'm not trying to do is I'm not trying to get this full arc in my cut. All I'm really doing, for me, this is what works really well for me, is for me to punch my hands straight at them. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a linear motion with the initial cut that allows me to roll off by moving a circular motion on the second cut. If I'm doing a full circular cut, good arcing cut on the first one, I have to stop that arc or roll that arc. Either stop that arc or roll that arc and come around to the other. I think neither of those are really what is being described in this text. Stopping it turns it into two full cuts, which I think is less effective. And rolling more like an Ablaufen is a different thing. It's not exactly what we're seeing described here. So you can certainly do the same thing with an Ablaufen. Totally works fine. But for now, we're thinking about how to create one action and transpose it into another. So what works really well is for me punching straight with that initial cut. Just punching straight in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll that into a Zwerch on the other side. And I'm going to do that by crossing my hands. And the easiest way to make that happen is to think about my right hand doing that punch forward. And my left hand, once that punch starts to get to completion, is going to hook underneath. So that what we're doing with this is we're creating two separate actions using hands doing two separate things. The first one is being driven by my right hand, just punching straight out. My left hand's along for the ride, right? Just to create that sense of that I'm coming toward the face with this cut. And then the second one, as I get out to there, even while my right hand is still doing its action, my left is going to punch to transpose over to here. So that's going to be a crappy cut unless you really get some hip into it, which is often why I think this left foot forward already works really well for me. I stomped on the mic. I'm over here. As I'm left foot here, I've got the hip already in place where I can engage that hip without having to step. Right? What I don't want to have to do is go 1, 2, because that's chaining those hands to the feet, making it hard for me to transpose one of these cuts into the other. So left foot's already forward, punch right with the right hand, then hook with the left. And then as it gets around here, so that changes the arc. That's how you transmute that arc of that Fehler. Boom, boom. And then from there, the power is going to be hips here. The Rome manuscript talks about opposite quarters. So when we first talked about this, when we talked about cutting to 4 quarters, it talks about doing diagonals. It's cut ox to flug, right? And so we're really thinking about that action. So I'm talking with my first one kind of threatening with the ox as I punch toward it. The second one is me hooking to come through, and I'm cutting down low. My hands are staying high, I'm cutting down low here with that second. So it ends up being cool. It should flow, so it shouldn't feel like 1, 2. It shouldn't feel like 1, 2. It should feel like a flow between one cut and the other. If you do it as a flow between, so you're really doing is a motion that moves into the second thing, right? You'll catch them with their hands in the defense position. If they are pushing against the sword, their hands are going to be extended, right? This is the context of what we're looking for this for. Their hands will be extended, which means their dominant hand, assuming you're both righties, their dominant hand is going to be right here. So this is why going to that opposite quarter really helps. I go to here to get the hands extend. As I cut through here, I'm cutting down right through that arm as it's down there. So it ends up being one fluid motion. Cut, flow. Punch, punch, and an arc. Makes sense? Do it one more time from the side. And in slow motion. All right, thanks TSG. See you later.